I'm glad you reached out to me. And like I had mentioned in one of my emails, like seeing some of the people that you've interviewed are like, wow, that's pretty cool. It's almost like different worlds. But it's neat to see that, it's like people that I kind of grew up with that you've interviewed. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and my theme is storytelling. It's not another celebrity podcast. It's not another Bravo show. It's just will it work or not? I don't know. But I like to think that if I find someone interesting, other people will too. Welcome back to the Bad Decisions podcast, where we lead not with celebrity, but with story. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Today's guest is Joe Grand, a.k.a. Kingpin, a renowned ethical hacker, inventor, electrical engineer, and the youngest member of the legendary hacker group, The Loft, a group of young Boston area hackers. Among other things, Joe has recovered millions of dollars of cryptocurrency from people who lost their passkeys. Welcome, Joe Grand.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, from what I can tell, your public outing began with a Washington Post article, which then caught the attention of the United States Senate, where you and your group of 6 other guys gave testimony. In that testimony, you testified before Congress that you as a group could take down the whole of the internet in 30 minutes. Tell us about the birth of that story, how it happened, and the congressional session that followed it.
Sure. Yeah, that was an interesting time. And looking back, nobody ever expected that we'd be talking about this 20-something years later, right? That was 1998. A group of 7 of us, of this hacker group called The Loft, we were invited to testify in front of the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee, which is now, I think, called the Department of Homeland Security, something. And they basically wanted to know, like, what doomsday scenarios could happen if there were bad actors taking over the internet, or what could happen. And cybercrime wasn't really a thing. State-sponsored adversaries in countries hacking each other wasn't really a thing. They wanted us to know, as 7 hackers basically in a clubhouse, like, what could we do? And if we could do that, imagine what somebody like actually focused on the effort could do. And we actually talked about a lot of things that I think were really early in the days of computing. The internet was just starting to become popular, and like AOL was probably still sending out the discs of like 100 free hours, and it was this new world. And so I think we laid out a lot of things that became kind of foundational of the cybersecurity industry. But of course, the media loves the snippets, and the main thing that came out of it was, one of the senators had asked, like, what's the worst thing you could do? And one of our guys, Mudge, was like, well, any one of us with a couple packets could take down the internet in 30 minutes. And he was actually referring to a vulnerability that he knew about back then that actually sort of reared its head a couple years ago, when I think it was Meta went down, and like everybody freaked out because social media was gone. And that was years and years later, and the problem hadn't been fixed. So he was just sort of alluding to one of the worst case scenarios that we had laid out. It just happened to be the most media friendly, and people took it and ran with it, and it was on a Trivial Pursuit card and now I have it in my office, and people still talk about it today.
That's amazing. So you've described yourself as a technical juvenile delinquent in your early years. Tell us about your coming of age as a hacker.
I love it. You did your research. This is great. Right off the bat. So my coming of age, I've just always loved electronics and computers. And it's kind of hard to explain, because I don't love a computer now like I loved a computer when I was a kid. And I think because the technology was different, it was a little more accessible from like this low level of like, wow, this thing is like, I can connect to other people over a telephone line using a modem and discover these systems. It was just a different world. But something about the early home computers I loved. My older brother and sister had a computer that my parents bought them. They decided to go do other things, and I just gravitated towards it. I loved it. I loved the looking back, I loved the solitude of my computer room. I loved the sort of privacy of being alone in this room with my computer, talking to other people, but talking to other people like me, not like other people at school.
No, I know. It was amazing. And you and I actually have something in common, and we're contemporaries. So we were both early adopters, and we both started with, well, it was my second, but my first computer was a Radio Shack TRS-80 with 2K, a whopping 2K. And then I got an Atari 800, and you had an Atari,
Nice, okay,
and you had an Atari 400. So I was exploring bulletin boards, and I would try to articulate to my parents and to older people that this is the future. And my parents are like, real businesses are never going to use computers. And I was trying to explain to them simple databases. So I hired a guy who turned out to be like an extortionist. I hired a guy to write a FileMaker program to replace the giant room of steel file cabinets for my parents' business and digitize them. And then the guy just wanted more and more money to update it. So I had to actually hire a hacker to circumvent FileMaker Pro's security system to get us back into it. So that was and I had friends who had I can't remember what they're called, blue boxes, red boxes to freak the payphones. And I was just like, well, this is interesting, but I also have money, so like, I can't be bothered with
that's that. And I just loved those things, like talking about a blue box and a red box, and like having these pieces of technology, or basically having tools to do things that other people couldn't do. And I really liked having that knowledge that I could really fuck somebody over if I wanted to. I didn't usually, but it was like knowing, right? So if there's like some of my peers, if they're giving me trouble, it's like, I know I could find their parents' credit rating. I could go get their, credit card numbers. I could get a new credit card. I could go, run up a whole bill. I could do whatever to their systems. Like it was this knowledge, and it was this power that I had that I didn't, really have in the real world. And I loved it. And that was like, I mean, maybe we communicated on some of the same bulletin board systems. It was a very small world back then.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I was an early Apple guy too. I had an Apple II, 2C, 2GS before my first Mac, and I still have on a pedestal in my office. I have the Mac 128K, the first one. And I'll never forget. And there was a great bulletin board called, I think it was called Macropedia, and I remember like that was the first time I got nailed with a virus. And it was an important learning curve, and I didn't go into computer science, but I was very active in computers in the early days. Like in my high school, we had a Hewlett Packard machine where you had to use the punch cards with the tip of a pencil to knock the holes out, and there were these university computers called Play-Doh, which was like
that was a little before my time. Very similar.
Do you remember them though? Yeah,
I remember them. I never used them.
Yeah. So let's we're going to jump around a little bit because I think it'll be fun. So one of the most notorious hacks in my town of Los Angeles occurred in 2014 when Sony Pictures Entertainment was breached by a group calling itself the Guardians of Peace. It was thought to be North Korea, and it was very costly. It's been reported lately that North Korean hackers have been managing to steal billions of dollars. How do we stay ahead of foreign bad actors like China, North Korea, and Russia?
Impossible. I think it's, a determined adversary always has the upper hand. A lot of the security industry is very reactive. It's, even in the world like that I deal with hardware hacking, it's like if you have the time and the motivation to sort of spend on hacking something, like you could probably achieve that goal. As a defender, you sort of have to anticipate all the current potential problems, future potential problems, and an attacker has to find maybe not one but a method in where developers, designers, security people have to kind of think about all of it. So I think it's a, I wouldn't say it's a losing battle, but it's definitely an uneven battle. And I would say, speaking of my favorite hack from Los Angeles, I thought you were going to say this one. This was, I think, from the 80s, but it was a guy named Agent Steele, Justin Tanner Peterson, which I wonder if you've crossed paths with him. He had hacked some telephone lines and was basically like for radio stations. You'd call in the fifth caller is going to win, blah blah blah. He basically could take over the phone lines and prevent everybody else from calling in, and then he would call in and always be the correct caller. And he won like a sports car and all sorts of other stuff. And he would like drive it down, Hollywood Boulevard or whatever. And I just thought that was epic. And that was the days before the video was all over. Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
But it's just like, think about that thought process of, I want to become this number caller. What's the best way to do it? And then kind of work backwards from there. And I thought it was just clever in so many ways. And of course, he got busted, and I think he became a rat for, a narc, whatever you want to call it, in the hacker scene. But like at the time, it was legendary, and that still sticks in my head of like, that's just a badass method of kind of gaming the system. And technically, it's not like he's breaking into a system and deleting data or releasing private information. Like it was kind of a mischievous, but not, he's not really causing people damage. So I really liked that one.
And it doesn't feel illegal. Maybe it was, but it feels like he just outsmarted the system.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, to answer your question about being a technological juvenile delinquent, like I was a huge troublemaker. I kind of pushed everybody's buttons. I was a skateboarder and sort of, grew up in the punk rock scene, and like just loved that element of pissing people off. And mostly because I just didn't really like any adult supervision or anybody around me. The computer was the same way. And, but we blurred that line a lot of like, we're doing computer mischief, but then at the same time, it's like, let's go break into the telephone company and like, connect to other people's phone lines from the alleyway of a building to start a massive teleconference that we could bring in all of our friends from all around the country. And it's $5 per minute per person, but we don't care because it's getting billed to somebody else. So all these things that, again, like didn't feel illegal. It just felt cool that we're abusing this, these things that we're learning about.
Yeah, I had this friend that I used to write with, and there was this cafe that was around that was actually Friends was made about this cafe. It was called the Insomnia Cafe on Beverly, and it was the only place that you could go right in the middle of the night. And I had this friend, Greg, and I'd be like, let's write. He'd always have to be screwing around with people's connections. So he'd turn his laptop toward me, his primitive laptop, and show me everybody's instant messages in the whole cafe. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? And I never
Everything
did
was
that.
clear, yeah.
I never did that. And then, I started out of college in the music business where I worked for a handful of years. And then I moved back into computer science. I was an IT guy at Disney and Universal and Dentsu, Japan's largest advertising agency. And I designed networks like Novell and Oracle and Sun and all that stuff. And it was always, cybersecurity and firewalls were all kind of new ground. And we tried so many systems, some of which were incredibly complicated. I forget there was one where you had to have this like credit card that had a timer on it, like an LCD screen, and you had to time them at the same time for a login. And the executive,
it was like a one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it was like now you have the two-factor authentication, right? Of like you're emailed a number, you're texted a number, like that. That was you're probably using a secure ID token, and
that's what it was.
Instead of that, instead of getting an email, it would just be the number on the display.
It was a clock.
I spent some time trying to reverse engineer that too and try to hack those. And like, those were very early days of trying to understand, increase security. But a lot of it was a little too inconvenient for a lot of people, or maybe too confusing. And, you still see people writing passwords down on sticky notes and storing passwords in text files. But it all depends on your risk profile, right? Like my mom is probably not going to get hacked for her document of all her passwords. She's probably going to get phished to give up personal information that could be used, for whatever. As opposed to somebody like me, maybe my target is not my credit card information. It is my passwords, and it is my access to social media. So somebody can then go pretend to be me, which there are plenty of Joe Grand impersonators already. So it's just a crazy world.
Yeah, it's like people ask me, how is it that you have never been hacked? And I'm like, because I would never click a link or open a file from someone that I'm not 100% sure about, because I've been around the block before.
You've seen it, right?
Yeah. So I found the crypto stuff super compelling. So you've recovered millions of dollars in cryptocurrency for people. Tell me about what was the first one, the Trezor wallet hack?
Yeah, so the first one was a Trezor one where a guy had emailed me out of the blue this was like right towards the tail end of lockdown. So like things were starting to open up, but most people were still sitting at home. And it was just perfect timing. He emailed me and he was like, "Hey, I have a Trezor One hardware wallet. I'm locked out. There's $2 million on it. Can you help?" And I normally spend a lot of time.
Describe to everybody what a Trezor wallet is.
Yes. Okay. So a Trezor wallet is Trezor is one company of many companies who make what are called hardware wallets, and they basically are little hardware devices that have a screen and you connect it to your computer. That basically, the simplest way to describe it is just it stores a piece of private information and then helps you kind of facilitate your cryptocurrency transactions. You don't need a hardware wallet to be involved in cryptocurrency. There are lots of other ways to store your key, but people trust hardware wallets because it's not software that could be hacked on the computer. It's not an exchange like Coinbase or Kraken where technically they own your money, you don't own your money. So it's a way to keep your funds offline and have a way to sign transactions and all of those things. This particular guy was very technically competent. He's an entrepreneur and had all these companies, and he had gotten involved in cryptocurrency very early and basically invested $25,000 in some, not a Bitcoin, but like some other alternate coin years ago. And at some point, that coin just totally took a dump. And he was like, "All right, let's just cash out." It was $5,000 at the time. Let's take a loss. Let's put it into something else, reinvest it. And that's when he realized he was locked out of his device because you need a PIN to get access to it, like a 4-digit, 6-digit PIN. At the time, you could go up to 9 digits. And he was like, "Whatever, it's $25K. It's a loss. I'll just, no big deal." He held onto the wallet, didn't think about it. But then as cryptocurrency started becoming more popular, that coin value went from the bottom at 5,000 up to 2 million. And then he's like, "Well, crap, this is real money. I need to get it off." I have been involved, of course, in hardware hacking my entire life, but not with hardware wallets, cryptocurrency. And it really is the same process, just a different product. So I had known some friends of mine had basically proven the concept that the chips used inside of these devices were hackable. So I was like, well, how hard could it be to replicate their work and sort of learn from that at the same time, and help this guy free his coins? And that started, at that point, a 3-month journey into that project, which has now turned into like a 3 or 4 year journey.
How interesting. How many Trezor wallets? I assume you had to buy other ones to test them before putting the original one in peril. What was without? I'm a techno nerd, and I would like the long explanation. But simplistically speaking, what was the sort of path to figuring it out?
Sure. So there's a technique called fault injection that you're basically intentionally causing a system to misbehave at just the right point in time that gives you some benefit as an attacker. So with these particular chips, and I'll say that almost every device is susceptible to fault injection unless a company has specifically built-in mitigations to prevent them, which are very few. But things like game consoles, your credit card, smart cards, mobile phones, like those tend to be more secure. And it just happens that this particular chip used in this particular type of device did not have mitigations. You can kind of compare it to like turning on and off the light switch really fast, where it's not really going to affect you. But with a chip, if you turn the power off and back on really quickly, that could skip over a security check or whatever else you want to try to do given your parameters. So that's basically the concept of using fault injection. There's a couple different levels of security that we have to get through with modern devices. The contents that I'm trying to get are encrypted, so there's an additional step afterwards of kind of post-processing. But the general concept is like kick down the security door, get the data that you need from the device. And it was a huge learning experience of doing this. I had to basically prove to this guy that I could hack 4 devices. So I bought 4 other Trezors. And of course, I bought way more before then to mess with. But I had to prove to him that I could hack 4 of them before he flew from New Jersey to my house. And while I was doing this research, my wife was like, "You should be filming this process." I have done, some YouTube videos before then. A lot of it was sort of based on like my phone, filming some stuff, bad audio, bad video quality. Like my goal was to just get the information out to my peers, which
Sure.
were hackers and engineers. Um, a lot of my videos had been engineering related, and she's like, you need to just remind people that you're still a hacker. So it was really her idea to film it, and I connected with some friends of mine who I'd worked with before, and we filmed the process in real time when the customer Dan came to my house. We filmed it all, hacked it live, and it turned into this gorgeous video of no doing of my own. That was my producer friend and director, his son, cameraman, like filming this, telling the story of like a very complicated technical thing in a way that people could understand, and it has this personal connection. It was amazing, and it went viral. And that sort of kick-started this whole thing of like, all right, if this guy needs help, maybe other people need help. Maybe we should formalize this a little bit, make it easier for people to contact me. And then, it's what I do when I'm not traveling and teaching and giving talks and stuff. And it is generally satisfying. Not always, but usually.
Sure. How much money have you recovered in crypto?
That's a great question. Millions for sure, tens of millions. I don't know exactly offhand.
Are you
in the tens of millions range.
I know you started a company. What's it called?
It's called offspec.io.
Offspec, right? Yeah, I visited it and I forgot it promptly.
It's offspec.io. And the choice of that was sort of like, well, we don't want to come off as just a regular stodgy company. Like my partner and I in this venture, like both come from punk rock. He's actually he was sort of around in LA, like in the early days. And like, we're like, what can we do that's not, off spec? It's like, we're hackers think outside of the regular specifications. So we just kind of made up that name. But yeah, we had to formalize it also because there are so many scammers of people pretending to be me. Once that video went viral, that people get scammed all the time of sending money to somebody they think is me, who they maybe like met on Instagram, and then they talk on Telegram, which, it's like anytime you have any sort of celebrity status, or in my case, I say like pseudo celebrity status, somebody's going to take advantage of that. And
of course,
on one hand, it's super annoying, and I feel bad for people that have gotten scammed. On the other hand, like I can't blame anybody for doing it, because I was, as a kid doing what I did. Like, this stuff happens, and you just have to be super aware of what's going on around you.
Yeah, but there's a line. There's a line between making free phone calls and robbing innocent people. And I think your heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable talking about it, how does the business structure? I would imagine. I mean, do you just take a straight percentage cut of what you recover?
Yeah, we don't really show that side in the video because most people are not really interested. But yeah, we don't charge any money up front, specifically because in the cryptocurrency world, if somebody is asking for money up front, they're usually going to take your money and run away with it.
Yeah. You eat what you kill.
Like, what's that?
I said you eat what you kill.
Yeah, right. I mean, and this is like, the world that we're in, or like the business that we're in of hacking these wallets. We're sort of, it's like kind of like a treasure hunt. It's kind of like, somebody else compared it to like underwater salvage, where you don't know what you get until you pull the thing out of the water. And we figured, let's just, to avoid this conflict and the problem of asking for money up front, like, yeah, let's just take the risk with the person. We'll do the attack at no charge, and we'll take some percentage on the other side, which from a business perspective is a horrible business configuration, right? Like anybody in business would probably be like, who went to business school or something, like that is ridiculous. You're spending all this time, all this money, all this effort on your own to do an attack that may not pan out to anything, or you might get it all prepared, and then the person who wants you to help disappears before you even do the work, which has happened also.
Yeah, I watched that video where you spent days helping those guys who ended up having like $30 in their account when they thought it was millions.
Yeah, I mean, you should see what we've been filming recently. We have a couple months worth of these amazing stories of highs and lows and everything in between. So it's not really a great business structure, but it is cool to be able to use my skills in a way that are helping people. And we realized by doing this so often, it's not even about the money that we're recovering. Like it doesn't have to always be millions of dollars.
Sure.
It might be $10,000, and that changes somebody's life. Where $1 million for somebody else is, lunch money.
It's peanuts. Yeah.
So we've really found this interesting kind of through line with all of this work. Is it really is about these personal stories and what they're going through emotionally, what they're going to do if we recover the funds. So it has this sort of satisfaction that is not always financially motivated. It's to be able to help somebody. And also a lot of times they enable us to record and video them. And now we can tell the story, and we're working on, hopefully either like this footage currently is just it's too good to be like a single YouTube video. So maybe it will be a series of YouTube videos, or maybe it will be on a streaming platform of like a series of 6. Like the world really needs to see what other people are going through. And because we realize it doesn't have to be always technical, people will really feel that. It's like watching Storage Wars, right? And like somebody finds some interesting thing. And that's what I sort of unexpectedly found from this is that satisfaction of, because I tell, like, I'm not really a fan of like socializing, and not really a fan of other people for the most part. But this is a way that I can sort of contribute to society, not just building up my own skills for my own personal satisfaction because it feels good, but to be able to use those in a way that like literally changes people's lives. And that's actually pretty fun.
Yeah, I like that. And you're doing good. Are you making the most profit you probably could? Probably not, but you're also probably doing just fine on YouTube and keeping the lights on and keeping your kids fed and all of that.
Yeah, I need to mention though. Okay, so because of my hacker background, like I absolutely hate advertising. I hate pop-up ads. I have ad blockers running, everything. Same. I only, as of like a week ago, monetized YouTube, because my whole feeling was always, as a hacker, sharing information and getting the resources out there. Like my goal isn't to make a video and make money on the video, at least not currently. My goal was to show a cool story. And then as the side effect, people are like, I can trust Joe. Let's have him hack, help me. And I didn't realize that YouTube, I guess over the past couple of years, like they can put ads on your videos whether you want them to or not.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just recently opted in. Like I was monetized many years ago when I was more active on it. But then when I started the podcast, they're like, you have to get to 4,000 hours. And I got there fairly quickly. But suddenly what started out as like $29 a month is, now it's something for me worth paying attention to and being cognizant of.
We missed the boat on these early videos because I refused to do it. And, it's like people deserve to get the information. But once I found out that YouTube, and if I go to my YouTube channel, like I can see the ones that they've put ads on and the ones that they haven't. And of course, all of the popular ones they put ads on. So I'm like, well, that's messed up. Like they basically forced me to monetize. And I haven't seen anything come of it yet. But I guess the advantage is at least we'll potentially make something and YouTube will make less. But also, when you monetize, you can select what sectors, what things you want marketed to your viewers.
Yeah.
And there's some horrible stuff on there. Like, there's hundreds of categories, as you know, right? Like, conspiracy theories and all sorts of religious things and alcohol and all these things that I was shocked at what they're targeting people. And I shouldn't be, because I've been in this is space, right? But having an ad blocker, like I've been in this bubble. And I was just amazed. So I basically spent half an hour unchecking all of the crap that I don't want people to see, at least through my videos.
Good.
But it's frustrating, like that you even have to do that, unless you host your own server where you put the videos up. But then, that's not really going to work anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've noticed mine changed over time. So in the beginning of my monetization journey, it was just like dodgy personal injury law firms, but now
just like whatever you want.
So now after a handful of successful things, I'm getting like whatever Lululemon and you know what I mean, like blue chip, brands.
Because they're targeting your viewing habits, and they know like now I know Scott watches that, that's his style
Oh,
or whatever. And
no, I don't mean the ones I'm
oh,
watching. I
not for
mean
you, for your viewers.
the ones that are get streamed to my viewers. So I'm just like,
Oh, okay, yeah.
at least they say that I see that I have good guests and they're doing more affluent, more legitimate
Oh, because
brands.
you can see that. Yes, that's right. And that's a way of like, yeah, if you're into the data harvesting side of things, I think I've just basically been living with blinders on. Is probably the right answer for a lot of, like, I try not to sort of concern myself with outside influences. I just want to do cool stuff and hack on stuff and hustle for making a living, which even to this day I still have to do because I've been independent for 20 something years, but I
Same.
absolutely love it. And I know, like, my personality is not going to work in a corporate structure. And I'm okay with that. So it's just, I like to just focus on things and not pay attention. But now it is kind of fascinating of like, oh, I guess we can see what my viewers are, what ads are being pushed to them and stuff. Like, yeah, it's like interesting and super like sketchy at the same time.
Yeah. So tell me more about what you and your partner do. Like, do you take contract work from the federal government? Would you from companies? If someone said, Joe, drop what you're doing with the crypto stuff, we'll give you a blank check and we want you to protect the CIA or the NSA and assemble a team of people to make incursions into our sworn blood enemies.
I mean, I will, as a blanket statement, I'll say I'll listen to anybody's request. I'm much more picky in what I actually do. And there are many things that I consider like crossing the line that I wouldn't get into. I try to avoid, any sort of active sort of attacking or, human rights violations or companies or countries that are associated with, invasions of privacy and data harvesting and human rights and all of these things that are horrible with the world. Because there are a lot of people that won't even care. And they're like, I'll go to certain countries that nobody would ever go to and who throw people in jail for no reason. I'll go there and help them create a system where they can spy on their citizens. Like, yeah, there's no way. I like to see what people.
But would you go after an American adversary for a big paycheck? Would you shut down Moscow's power grid on Christmas Eve if your government called upon you to do it?
Well, I'm not going to answer that on a podcast.
I
mean, it's unlikely.
All right.
Because I don't want to put myself in that position. There's a lot of potential cases, even with cryptocurrency, of like maybe there's some criminal investigation of somebody did something. It's like, I don't know the whole story and I don't want to get involved or entangled in something where people come after me. I'm still at heart, I'm still a paranoid teenage hacker. And like, I do stuff that interests me. I share stuff that interests me. But I don't share my whole world, and I definitely don't advertise everything I do, but I have to be comfortable with the things I do. And if it's not something that I believe strongly in, I'm not going to do it no matter how much the money is.
Same. Well, respect for that. Let's see. Back to do you think the future of warfare is done from a keyboard, not the battlefield?
I think it's both. We just watched Full Metal Jacket last night.
One of my favorites.
Which it's amazing. And I had seen it before, but my older son had watched it in history class. And they're talking about the Vietnam War and everything and the whole history leading up to that and just the problems in the area. So we watched that film, and it was a reminder of like, the olden days of military action was like throw a bunch of people at it.
Infantry,
as human capital, right? And see what happens. I still think I see, and then the cyber, in quotes, the cyber side is now something of like, you can throw computers at it, you can throw technology, you can do things, but I think a lot of warfare still comes down to sort of fear and power, and that comes more from this physical aspect of destruction, as far as like, instead of like, oh, the power grid went down. There's some.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think humans, when there's a cyber attack, it doesn't hit home as much as something when you're in physical risk of death or destruction. And there was a TV series called Zero Day that was about that, of like some cyber attack, and Robert De Niro was in that one. Cyber attack and trying to find out who is involved in that, and they took down the rail system and airplanes, all of these things. As I guess you could even think about it as like the doomsday scenario of our Senate testimony, but more modern.
Yeah.
And they showed social unrest and all of these things. So maybe with a coordinated attack, it would be disruptive, but I think it's a different fear than traditional warfare. And I have no idea. I mean, I'm a nerd in a room. Like, I don't know military history really.
No,
or like
it's all very interesting stuff. I found very fascinating was that Ukrainian attack on Russia, beginning at 1,500 miles inside the Russian interior. And I thought it was fascinating. They trucked in drones all that way that unleashed holy hell on that.
Yeah.
And then, I met a guy. I was in Scotland just playing golf after a photo shoot in London. And I got paired up with this guy at the first golf course, the Royal and Ancient Golf Course in St. Andrews, the old course. And I'm like, what do you do for a living, dude? And he was just like, oh, I'm a pilot for the Royal Air Force. And I was like, do you get to fly a Typhoon? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, that's one of the coolest planes I've ever seen.
So cool.
He's like, oh, mate, come. You got to check out my helmet with the heads-up display. I got it in the car. And I was like, and we stayed in touch, and we became friends. And then he goes, hey, mate, are you still in LA? I said, yeah. He goes, I'm living in Vegas now. And I was like, ew, why? And he said, it's the worst. I spent my whole life being perfect so I could be Top Gun. And now I'm sitting with a bunch of gamer kids in shipping containers who show up with a Starbucks in their hand in cubicles and fly drones killing people all over the world. And I'm like, that does sound shit. And he's like, and these guys are not soldiers. These guys are geeks with joysticks.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, you're almost gamifying killing people. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's
all it is.
You're so removed from it. Yeah, I think there's going to be, I feel like there's never one silver bullet. So you kind of diversify your military strategy, and I think cyber is part of that. Speaking of like fighter pilots, like one of my goals. So I don't have a huge bucket list, but one of my goals is to be able to fly in like, F-16 or whatever fighter jet, which is really, really hard to do apparently. But that's the goal of like, how can I somehow make some sort of video that convinces some group to put me in one of those?
I may have a guy. I may have a guy for you or two.
Yeah, and I won't hack it. I promise.
Yeah. I've done work for the Marines, and I've got a few friends in that world. So we'll talk.
Nice.
This is just outside of the hacking world. I would just love if you could weigh in. Just another tech topic, and I wouldn't call myself a cynic, but so far I'm mostly unimpressed on the world of generative AI so far. And ChatGPT is rife with errors and misinformation. The images and videos are cold and lifeless, and all of it lacks humanity, at least from a creative standpoint. And everyone says, well, wait till next year. Are we overinvested in AI? Because I'm unimpressed so far.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, I was surprised in how helpful AI has been for like some of my hacking work, just low level writing of code. I think there are some like really neat uses, and AI development's been going on basically since computers had started. It just happens to now be public and mainstream. I think it's really interesting. What worries me is people over relying on it, and sort of the unrestrained potential uses of it and abuses of it. So I think a lot of times, like I just had a phone call with somebody earlier today, talking about some of the wallet hacking work, and in one of his emails, he was like, "Well, I understand that this is like a really simple type of attack." So I was like, and I asked him today, I was like, "Why? What makes you think it's simple?" And he's like, "Oh, AI told me." And I'm like, "Well, AI is totally wrong." So then I explained the process. And AI likes to pretend that it's right when it's not. And I've had all sorts of, buggy code and buggy responses and stuff that's like, Joe Grand is a cowboy that lives in Wyoming, and totally wrong, because there is no Joe Grand as a cowboy in Wyoming. So it's like we're at this cusp of it's useful for certain things and very interesting for certain things, but like with every tool, it's going to be abused. and people are going to trust it. And what really scares me is if we lose the technical competency of people actually writing code who actually understand how a computer system works, because everything is based on computers now. When you get on an airplane, you don't want to think about an intern that had prompted AI to write some control code. You want to know it was somebody who actually knew what they were doing, hopefully. And even then, you still have problems. So yeah, I mean, it's like you're opening up a can of worms that will never go back into the can, and you just
100%.
hope that some of those worms are actually useful. But without regulation, without kind of oversight, it's going to be abused way more than we know.
Yeah, and I only really analyze it from a creativity standpoint because that's, I'm a visual artist and I'm surrounded by people who are in that medium. So 5 people a week will send me a trailer that they made using AI and say, what do you think about that? What do you think about this? Yeah, perfect abs and weird head, giant heads. And they're like, what do you think about this as a series concept? And I'm like, I'm done being polite. I'm just like, it's cold, it's lifeless, it's inhuman. Look at the eyes. Like, human beings relate to other human beings. Like, my mother doesn't know anything about my world as a photographer, but she'll see a picture and she'll be like, there's something that doesn't look right about this. And I'm like, yeah, it's overly photoshopped. And she's like, I don't know what that is, but it looks fake. And that's the thing is, the human brain knows when something isn't right.
Yes, that's a great point. And from that artistic side, it almost, AI is sort of, it's maybe devaluing isn't the right word, but it's kind of devaluing actual skilled people. And you're right, like there is a big difference, and maybe somebody could use it as a way of getting an idea about how to set up a frame in a shot or something. But yeah, I think a lot of the AI generated stuff is it will get better, and there's deep fakes that are amazing. But there's also the copyright violations you have to worry about, and now with celebrities of having to protect their own, which they had to do anyway, their whole likeness, but now it's a different thing. And if there's no rules or regulation, people can get scammed left and right. So it is, yeah, I'm definitely not a total naysayer. I was, until I used it for the first time to help me reverse engineer some code. And I'm like, holy crap, that just saved me 4 hours of time. But I think
I use it every day too, judiciously, but
you have to fact check and make sure it's not stealing from untrusted sources or unreferenced sources. And if it's generating video, graphics, like all of those things are, I don't know how that's even happening. But yeah, I mean, I think it's like, if people are using it in the right way, it's fine. I just think most humans want to look for the easiest solution, and they're gonna rely on it too much. And then I think what's going to happen, maybe I'm wrong, but like maybe it comes back around where then, it has to be a human. So companies now, maybe they're using a lot of AI, but then maybe they realize, oh, maybe I do need to re-employ the actual human because they have the human eye, right? Like photographer versus computer generated. It's the same thing.
But what scares me, and look, in some cases, I think the AI is like for product photography. I don't think it's necessary to hire someone $10,000 a day to shoot a perfume bottle. I think that can be done fine. Yeah. Sorry, lab rats, but I respect you, but whatever. That trades off the station. But my biggest fear is good enough good enough? Like, movies don't look as good as they used to. There's no more movies that look like Lawrence of Arabia. Records don't sound as good as they used to when they were 2-inch analog and tube everything. Photos don't look as good as they used to from film to digital.
Right.
When
does it get normalized?
Yeah, well, all of these things aren't as good, and no one cares. But how far are we going to go before they care? Will they just stop caring? Will the bar just keep dropping?
I mean, if it's any human nature, it probably will keep going down. But you'll have small subsets of people that are like, oh, it's like rediscovering vinyl, which is now huge,
and film,
and like a lot of kids are not even using social media anymore. So I think you have subsets that recognize the value of, say, analog technology. Oh, nice. Look at that.
Still using it. Still looks
Yeah,
still looks better than the $100,000 red camera across the room.
exactly right. And that's the thing is like there's going to be some people that recognize the value in the analog or the older technologies and maybe couple that with new technologies. But I think most people are just going to they're going to use what's given to them. They're going to eat, consume whatever is given to them. And at some point, the people who knew what good looked like, good in quotes, whatever it was, and whether that's visual, audible, text, the content that's being served to them, whatever it is, like eventually people are going to forget what it used to be like, and they're going to deal with whatever is given to them now. And that's same with the politics and fascism and authoritarianism and all of the things. It's this slippery slope, and it happens with everything. And I think that's human nature. And so even if there is a benefit to AI, like any other tool, any other technology, like there's a lot of the negative side that I think is going to affect humanity in ways that we haven't fully figured out yet. Just like the internet, right? Just like any massive technology like that, mobile phones, all things like that, where you have great connectivity, but now you have a surveillance state. And there's always a balance, but I think it's a slippery slope, sort of devolving into being able to, like, again, I'm not a huge political whatever, but it's like it's devolving into a way to kind of control the populace in ways that it's going to be very easy to generate propaganda, and as already happened. But it's like if people don't remember what it used to look like or what society used to be, it's much easier to create a new society of whatever people in power want to do.
And I think it's trickiest in our society of any in the world, because in almost every culture in the world, old age is exalted, and here it is disposable, and you are not, you don't understand the current matrix.
Exactly.
But it is what it is. Last question. How's your life compartmentalized now? How much time do you spend making YouTube videos versus cybersecurity, crypto recovery, family, and so on? What's your day like?
Question. So I've always had a really hard problem separating, I guess what you would say, work and life. Only in the past couple months, or I guess maybe within the past year, I'm trying to build a better balance, but I haven't really had a good balance. And if it wasn't for my wife, who is very understanding of that passion, you could say, I would be in a much different place. She is a different balance to me, and has helped me realize a lot of things about myself of like, okay, yes, I can work on this stuff 24 hours a day, but that's probably not healthy. I should probably take a walk, take a shower, put on different clothes. And for videos, I have to, right? And for giving talks, I have to, because I'm going out in the public and doing things. So a lot of the things that my typical habits are to just work on stuff until I feel like I don't want to work on it anymore, but that's not healthy. So
she's your balancing wheel.
Definitely balancing wheel. And through, she's an author, and through her first book, which is called Troublemakers and Superpowers, which was written for our kids who have different types of sort of learning challenges and neurodiversity. She had written that it's a biography book of different people, celebrities and non-celebrities, who have overcome challenges in their childhood after they were diagnosed or they had some trauma that they were able to start learning about, and how you can still be successful and thrive with whatever challenges you've had in your past. She had written that for them to be able to relate to other people. And I read the book, and so there's a chapter. I'm in the book as a chapter, along with a childhood friend of mine. Everybody else in that book has a conclusion of like, okay, this person, they went to therapy and figured out this, that, the other thing. Mine sort of ended with no conclusion. And I started thinking like, well, wait, maybe I should find a conclusion of, how does my brain work? So I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder, which as a technical person, it probably is not a surprise. I think probably 90% of the people I know are on the spectrum, and we're all together. So none of us seem different until you talk to somebody who's not in this world, and they're like, you guys are all different. And also depression, which has played a lot through my life, personal life, things I do, but people don't see that. They see the YouTube videos, they see the talks. So I'm just learning about all of these things. And I think, balance of work-life balance is huge. burnout is huge in our field, the hacker field especially. Depression is also a big thing, and all these other neurodiversity things. I wouldn't even call them differences because they are so common that it's important to talk about it first of all, so other people can relate to it. But for me, it's like this new project of like I'm learning all these things. So I guess to answer your question, I did not have a balance for a long time. I'm trying to have a better balance. And a lot of that comes down to just scheduling things that get me out of my house and out of my brain. Right.
And
so it's like,
yes, same thing.
yeah.
I did pick up, from watching your videos. I was like, this guy is a different breed of cat, and he's not like me, but he's like me in that he's different than everyone else. And I've always kind of felt that way and dealt with a lot of highs and lows as well.
Yeah. And I think that even, you trace back, it makes a lot of sense looking back, much more than it did at the time about things. But yeah, I mean, I think it also comes down to just finding things that I enjoy and that I believe in, and that changes over time. And like we talked about, it's cryptocurrency wallets, it's teaching, who knows what it could be in the future. And I don't have any sort of fixed guardrails of where I'm going to go. It's just as long as I believe in it and I'm comfortable in what I do.
Yeah, for me, it's the same. Yeah, I think we're similar in that, like for me, if I'm doing a photo shoot for an advertising campaign, if I'm directing a commercial, a music video, if I'm writing a book and it's making people smile and happy and doing TikToks that make people laugh, as long as I'm perceiving or providing a service and being appreciated for it, that's enough for me in this life.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah.
So, Joe Grand, tell the folks at home where they can find you online.
So the easiest way, just go to joegrand.com. You'll see a bunch of links to my official social media, my engineering stuff, everything there. Don't just search for my name, because you might end up talking to an impersonator and they'll, somehow convince you to give them money. So joegrand.com is the best starting point.
Great. Well, this was a really joyous conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to do it. And I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks again for having me. And we should definitely connect. And I'm sure we have so many more things to talk about. I do come down to LA sometimes, so I'll hit you up.
All right. And I come up your way sometimes too. The Bad Decisions podcast was produced by Brock Workman of Herdat Entertainment. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss an episode. The Big Book of Bad Decisions is available for purchase wherever books are sold. A special thanks to today's guest, Joe Grand, for joining me today. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Thanks for listening.